What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. So, if you're new to the channel, every year I do a list of my top roller coasters that I have ridden at the end of every year. And obviously, it has come to that time, so for the past few weeks I've been arranging my list that I have kept for years and have kept changing over the years to make another list to display my personal top roller coasters. Now, even though all of these coasters are ranked from 50 to 1, every single one of these coasters I'm going to mention are great. I mean, if they're on this list, they are great roller coasters. I got to get some new coaster credits this year, getting me up to a count of 420. Making the top 50 is no easy task. It has to have a unique experience, has to stand out in some way, and has to give me that wow factor. Now, I have a few rules for this list. Rule number 1 is that I do count closed coasters as credits still, even though that this is a 2024 list. I think it's important to look back at some of the coasters that still make my top 50, and if they still existed, this is where I would put them. And if a ride has gotten remodeled drastically enough, I will count the original and the new version as two separate credits. This is Cedar Flags, and today, we are going to be talking about my top 50 from 2024. Coming in at the number 50 spot, we have Ridden at Holiday World. Now, I just talked about the Voyage at Holiday World being on the honorable mentions list, but I personally like Ridden a little bit more. I found the airtime to be a lot more intense, I found the pacing to be a lot more non-stop, and even though the ride is a lot shorter than the Voyage, I found the scenery and the overall feel of the ride to make it a more enjoyable experience. My personal highlight of the ride has got to be that drop midway through the ride. This just takes everyone on the train off guard, especially if you're in the back. You are going to have some great airtime, and this ride is filled with some great laterals as well. For the next spot, we have Altair at Cinecittà World, located near Rome in Italy. Now, this is an Intamin 10 inversion coaster, but the modern variant. It has lap bars instead of over-the-shoulder restraints, and it has a curved first drop. This is similar to Sick at Flamingo Land if you know too much about that one. In fact, they are exact clones. All 10 of these inversions provide a great moment of this ride, but my favorite moment of the ride has got to be that finale with 4 back-to-back Heartline rolls, and one more for good measure. For the number 48 spot, we go to another Intamin coaster. This is Fahrenheit at Hershey Park. This Intamin inversion machine has a very compact layout, but that doesn't excuse it from having so many elements, so many inversions, and a very forceful, airtime-filled layout. For the number 47 spot, we go to Knoebels to talk about Phoenix, the classic wooden coaster relocated from Texas that is one of the most well-preserved rides I have ever seen, period. The track is extremely smooth, the restraints are great, gives you a lot of ejector airtime throughout the ride. My favorite moment has probably got to be that final set of airtime moments, or the double down, specifically in the back row, as you will be all over the place up into your restraint in that very moment. For the number 46 spot, we go to Silver Dollar City to talk about Powder Keg. This is a launch coaster created by S&S, and even though it's not as forceful or punchy as some of the others, it still has a great layout following it. And though that launch is great, I think my highlights of the ride are the incredible airtime moments that have views of the mountains. This is one of my favorite coasters here at Silver Dollar City, and the uniqueness combined with the airtime, combined with the theming, combined with the launch, make this a very well-rounded coaster that most people can ride, and that will give a thrill. Number 45 is Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure. This CCI wooden coaster has a massive variety of airtime hills after that first drop. It is nothing but airtime and laterals from the first drop to the final brake run, as you go out and back with a series of massive camelbacks. You go around the turnaround, go back with more airtime, and finish the layout off with a nice lateral helix. Number 44 is Lightning Rod at Dollywood. This is a ride I have not gotten to ride since they removed the launch. I first got to ride this in 2021, and I will say, even though the launch and the elements were great, it wasn't as intense as I thought it was going to be. But with that being said, that quad down has got to be one of my favorite airtime sequences out of any coaster ever. Viewing Dollywood as you're going down that mountain, going down these airtime hills, it's an unforgettable experience, whether it has a lift hill or a fast-paced launch. For the number 43 spot, we go from Tennessee to Florida to talk about Cheetah Hunt at Busch Gardens, Tampa. This Intamin multi-launch coaster is definitely one of the more unique ones, as it focuses more on the ride's layout than its elements. It goes out and back, and throughout the ride it meanders a lot, but has some great inversions and airtime moments. It's meant to be a family thrill, and you could feel that, but in the best way possible, because it truly is a very well-rounded ride, very similar to something like Powder Keg, where most people can enjoy it, but you're still going to get a very good thrill while riding it. Now, for the number 42 spot, we have a pretty interesting one. This is a ride I got to ride only once on its opening day this year. This is Top Thrill 2 at Cedar Point. And I cannot say this enough, this ride is a complete opposite from the original Dragster experience. Instead of that 0 to 120 launch, you have a nice gradual set of launches that swing you up to that top hat, but it provides a completely new experience that has some new thrills attached to it. First off, that backwards launch is great, leading you into that spike, which I will say really surprised me. That spike feels like it lasts forever, and when you're at the top, you can see the entire park below you. That top hat has got to be one of my favorite elements of all time. Of course, it really isn't changed that much from Dragster, but that drop is truly one of the most insane moments on any coaster ever, whether it have an extra car or have a hydraulic launch. Coming in at the number 41 spot, we have Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Universal's Islands of Adventure. Another fun-filled coaster that has less thrilling elements and more just very enjoyable ones. Now that's not to say this ride doesn't have some very good elements, like those switchbacks and those 7 different launch sequences, including one that has a spike and goes backwards. For the number 40 spot, we have a more thrilling launch coaster. We have Storm Runner at Hershey Park. This is an intimate hydraulic launch coaster, and it has a decent set of inversions as well, making this a very well-rounded coaster. First off, you have that launch, which truly is an insane experience. I love these hydraulic launches by Intamin. You have the top hat, which, if you're sitting near the back, you are going to get some great airtime. And the rest of the layout provides some very unique, maybe even one-of-a-kind elements. At the number 39 spot, we have Fury 325 at Carowinds. Now, this coaster, in my opinion, is a huge showcase of some of B&M's best elements. You have that first drop, the treble clef, and that airtime-filled finale. The only reason I don't have it too much higher is just because I felt like this ride needed a few more, but the elements it does have makes it a very good fit here at Carowinds. For the number 38 spot, we have Max Force at Six Flags Great America, located near Chicago. Unlike an LSM launch or a hydraulic launch, this ride uses an air compression launch, and this ride has an intense one. That launch is extremely quick. The speed, the acceleration, everything comes at you in a very instant, and within almost a blink of an eye, you are basically going up that massive inversion set. And most inversions on this ride are super unique, including a dog tongue and a max dive loop. The number 37 spot goes to Mamba at Worlds of Fun, located in Kansas City, Missouri. I got to ride this in 2023, and when I got to ride every single one of these elements, all of them were designed so well, and all of them were designed to be taken at full force. For example, that airtime hill after the first drop, when you're sitting in the back row, I was out of my seat throughout the duration of that entire moment. And after that turnaround, there is an airtime filled finale, which will be having you hop out of your seat for the entire time until you slam back in it for the final brake run. For the number 36 spot, we go to Steel Curtain at Kennywood in Pennsylvania. This is a ride that I've gotten to ride multiple times, but not in the past year, and all of the inversions it has are definitely great and complement this park extremely well. First off, you have that Drachenfire dive drop, which catches everyone off guard. Some of my other highlights include that banana roll, and the 0G stall over the midway when you get crazy hang time, look down, and see the people looking up. For the next spot, we go to Diamondback at Kings Island in Ohio, and this ride is another B&M airtime machine. And every single element on this ride seems to provide some sort of weightlessness that will have you talking once this ride is over. From that first drop to the end of the splashdown, you are launching out of your seat, either in a floater way or full-on ejector. For the number 34 spot, we have another coaster by B&M. This is Raging Bull. And while Diamondback is all airtime, Raging Bull has airtime, but with some very nice positive G elements as well, especially near the end of the ride. This B&M has a twister layout, which means it focuses less on the out and back aspect of airtime hills and camelbacks, and focuses more on helixes and twisting through the layout. And something that provides an extreme, intense experience, especially if you're sitting in the back row. We have another B&M at number 33, it is Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. This is another airtime filled B&M hyper, this one with an out and back layout, and the airtime hills this ride has are some of the most standout ones on B&M Hypers. And though the first half of the ride is my favorite, I love the second half as well, where you just meander throughout the rides and then go to the pond in the middle of the park and kind of coast through that. I think that that's a very nice touch to this ride and adds to the shark-like feel of it. I love the color scheme as well, and overall this ride just looks and rides great. Number 32, we go back to Worlds of Fun to talk about Prowler, the GCI wooden coaster at this park. This is my favorite GCI Woody for many reasons. Number one, it has the most intense airtime I've experienced on a GCI. It has one of my favorite layouts as it goes back into the woods, and you really cannot see much of the park. And three, it's extremely smooth for a wooden coaster that's over 10 years old. Alright, we are moving back to B&M territory to talk about the number 31 spot. It is Thunder Striker at Carowinds. Some good old B&M airtime, another out and back layout, filled with camelback after camelback after camelback. This ride has a bit longer of a layout with a nice few set of elements at the end, but the airtime moments truly make this ride what it is and this high on the list. And for the number 30 spot, we have another B&M. This is Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey. And this ride, just like the ones I mentioned, has a long out and back layout. This one seems like it just lasts forever as you go out into the woods, very distant from the rest of the park, and all of the elements provide some sort of force, whether it be the hammerhead turn, the camelbacks, or that massive helix. Now we go to the number 29 spot, which is Orion at Kings Island, my favorite coaster at the park, and a ride that has great elements from start to finish. You start off with that very menacing lift hill leading into that 300-foot drop, which, like I said, B&M Giga drops are some of the best, but I think my personal highlight of the ride are these two back-to-back airtime moments midway through the ride. You have a low-to-the-ground bunny hop, and then you have this massive camelback. Both of these elements provide nothing but strong ejector and nothing else. For the number 28 spot, we go to Six Flags Great Adventure again to talk about a now-defunct coaster. This is King Ka. When this opened up, it was the world's tallest and fastest roller coaster, and towering at 456 feet, that top hat looked crazy, and getting on it for the first time was such an exhilarating experience that will always stick with me. And I got to ride it for the final time this past July, and it was just as good as I remembered. Going to the number 27 spot, we have Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. This is an RMC airtime machine, and as we get further into the list, we are going to see a lot more RMCs. I'm a huge fan of RMC, I'm a huge fan of the abrupt airtime, the pacing, and so this is a great example of how RMC goes. I think overall this ride just looks good as well. I love the queue, it definitely fits the theme and vibe that the ride was trying to go for. The trains look great as well, and as you're on the ride, after that queue and seeing those trains, you are still impressed by the great airtime that this ride has to offer. Number 26, we have a similar story. Instead of Twisted, this is Wicked Cyclone, located at Six Flags New England. Very similar to Twisted Cyclone, is another short-scale RMC that provides some great airtime moments that will shock you every single time. The reason I rank this one a little higher is because it does have more elements to it. It has a slightly longer layout, and so for that, I will put it a little higher. Alright, we are halfway there through the list, and for the next one, we are going to talk about Hades 360, located at Mount Olympus in Wisconsin. This ride opened up in 2005, but then later on added the inversion, and I think the inversion complements the ride very well. The unique tunnel element after the first drop and the inversion, where you get some crazy low-to-the-ground airtime, and it fits into the ride's theme very well. But then you also just have the complete ride experience. You have the pre-lift, you have the drop into the tunnel, you have that return course. It just feels like it's a complete experience when you walk off. For the number 24 spot, we are going to look at Pantherian at King's Dominion. No matter what name this ride goes under, this ride is still one of the most intense coasters ever. This ride has a first drop that leads right into a low-to-the-ground right-hand turn that will make me gray out every single time. And the whip of this ride is non-stop. And the rush that this ride has is something you really can't describe unless you get on it. For the number 23 spot, we have Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. Now, in the beginning of the video, I did say that I was going to count remodelations as two separate credits, which is why I have both Top Thrill Dragster and Top Thrill 2 on the list. Now, why do I have Dragster higher? Simply because of that 0 to 120 launch. Nothing changed about the top hat for me, but that 0 to 120 launch really did make the ride that much more special, and it was probably my favorite element on any coaster, period. For the number 22 spot, we have Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City, located in Branson, Missouri. This coaster is right on the side of a hillside in the Ozark Mountains, and you can see just about everything. This ride might have one of the greatest views out of any coaster I have ever been on. But don't let that view distract you, because that first drop is one of my favorites on an RMC. And just the way it was profiled, you are out of your seat for most of that moment. But the rest of the ride does not stop, as you have a set of inversions and sharp and unique airtime moments. For the number 21 spot, we have my personal favorite B&M coaster. This is Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia. In my opinion, this is just B&M perfection. This is the best B&M has to offer that I've been on, and that is because it has the airtime of the other coasters, but just much, much more of it. This ride wants to throw you all around every which way. The amount of airtime on this ride can vary, but if you're sitting in the front or back row, you are going to get so much. For our number 20 coaster, we have Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood in Pennsylvania. This is my favorite coaster at Kennywood, and this is the coaster I've gotten to go on the most times out of any coaster I have ever been on. I have gotten to ride this in the front, back, middle, no matter what row. This ride provides a great experience from an old Arrow. This was remodeled by Morgan in 2001, and when it opened as Phantom's Revenge, it had extremely positive reviews, having that insane airtime sequence at the end. And that second drop, if you're sitting in the back, you are going to fly out of your seat, slam back into it, and have some great positive and negative Gs. Our number 19 spot brings us to TMNT Shellraiser at the American Dream Mall located in New Jersey. When I talk about layout, I talk about a wide variety of elements, and TMNT Shellraiser is one of the first rides I think of when it comes to that. You have both a launch and a lift hill, and you have that separated throughout the ride to provide even more of a ride experience. You have a massive inversion collection, some great airtime moments, and one of my favorite moments going up that lift hill and going into the world's steepest drop with a view of the New York City skyline in the distance. For our number 18 spot, we go to Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. My favorite coaster at Silver Dollar City is a very unique one, as there is no other coaster like it in the United States. And this ride is great for many separate reasons. First off, the elements with those spinning cars, you take it with such more intensity. That first drop is one of the craziest first drops ever on a coaster. It would be a normal 90-degree drop on any other coaster, but with that spinning train, you might sometimes be going sideways or even backwards. Number 17 is Monster at Adventureland in Iowa. Another Gerstlauer, but this time outdoors, and with a great layout as well. Now, what separates this from Shellraiser is the lap bars and the very unique profiling, and the fact that this ride has every single element profiled and delivered perfectly. Every single inversion has just the right amount of hang time. Every single element just has that right amount of whip. Number 16, we go to Maverick at Cedar Point, a ride I've gotten to ride many times, and a ride that shaped the coaster industry today. In a time when coasters were trying to get taller and faster, this roller coaster focused on low-to-the-ground elements, several launches, and nice whippy inversions. And they very much succeeded, as that is basically the motto for most coasters today. And all of these elements are delivered perfectly, especially the airtime moments in the first half and the Stangle dives near the end. For the number 15 spot, we go to Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom, located in Louisville. This Chance Hyper GTX was the first of its kind when it came out, and like many other rides on this list, this ride is nothing else but a major airtime machine. Now, it isn't too tall or fast, but the airtime it has is some of the most exhilarating I have been on in my life, especially that first drop leading into that camelback after the first drop. It's a lot more forceful than it looks on the off-ride, and especially the finale consisting of all of these airtime moments, it is just an unforgettable experience that you will just want to keep getting back on. Coming in at the number 14 spot, we have Millennium Force at Cedar Point in Ohio. This truly is the full Giga Coaster experience, as it was the original when it came out in 2000, and to this day, provides some great moments. First off, that first drop. I mean, if you're sitting especially in the back, that first drop with that lakeside view is some of the greatest that Intamin has to offer. You have that overbank turn that you go right into, where I end up graying out a lot. And then you go into a tunnel which leads onto the island in the middle of the park. I think something that makes this my favorite Giga is the fact that it has all of this scenery and all of this terrain advantage, while also providing a forceful and airtime filled element for the size this ride is. At the number 13 spot, we have Jersey Devil, located at Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey. This is another RMC airtime machine, and even though it's not liked as much as some of the others, I put it this high because every single time I have gotten on it, I have gotten some of the craziest RMC airtime that the company has to offer. This ride will have you going every which way throughout the ride's layout. Number 12 spot is another coaster I believe is pretty underrated, and one that I put up very high. It is Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. The rides I got were some of the greatest muck rides has ever had to offer in my personal opinion. You have the launches, which aren't too much, but the elements after the launches are what really puts this ride up for me. You have the inversion collection, which provides some great hang time, and of course the airtime hills, which are similar to some of the other coasters I mentioned earlier on the list, where you just have a few seconds of pure ejector bliss. It's very complete, and it has so many different elements that any thrill seeker can enjoy. Going into the number 11 spot, we have another multi-launch coaster. This takes us to Busch Gardens Williamsburg to talk about Pantheon. In this ride, to say the least, just has so much to offer. First off, you have that first launch with some uniquely shaped airtime moments and that inversion, but the part that really put this high up on the list for me is that swing launch with the airtime moments. After that launch, you go up into a very good top hat with airtime the entire way down, and then another great set of elements that have some great airtime as well. Alright, we have reached my top 10, and we have a coaster that is no stranger to my top 10. It is Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom. Now, I put Lightning Run very high, but I also put Storm Chaser very high, as this is the favorite at the park, but I don't really find the two very much different. The only reason I put this one much higher is because it just provides more. While Lightning Run ends, this ride just seems to keep going and going with the airtime, especially that finale when it's just airtime hill after airtime hill. For the number 9 spot, we have Superman the Ride, located at Six Flags New England, my favorite coaster in the region, for one reason, of course, airtime. And when I say this ride has airtime, it has so much airtime. It has both an out and back layout and a twister layout at the end, which I think complements the ride very well, and both of these sections provide different types of airtime moments. For the number 8 spot, we have Skyrush at Hershey Park, located in Hershey, Pennsylvania. This ride is non-stop. Starting with that first drop, especially if you're sitting near the back, you are going to have a very unique experience, as this drop is profiled in such a way where it first lifts you out of your seat and then slams you out of your seat before you slam back into your seat. Powerful ejector after powerful ejector after powerful ejector throughout the ride's entire layout. It has a very compact layout, and the look of the ride over that pond makes it even better. Now, going across the park, we could actually find our number 7 spot as well. This is Wildcat's Revenge, another new credit for 2024 that I did not get to ride in 2023. This ride is a very well-rounded RMC, but it's also one of the most intense RMCs, as some of the airtime moments are even more intense than your average. Including that airtime moment right after the first turnaround, we go to another RMC for the number 6 spot. This is Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion in Virginia. While this isn't as tall, fast, or intense as Wildcat's Revenge, it has a longer layout, has more airtime, and in my opinion, just has the more well-rounded layout, as these elements just stick out in such a particular way. It seems like every single element on this ride could not be profiled in a better way. Those 3 camelbacks especially are just some of the craziest on any coaster, but my favorite sequence of the ride might be that airtime hill with the outward bank turn right after. These 2 moments are probably some of the most intense on the ride. Alright, we have reached the top 5, some of the greatest coasters I have ever been on. For the number 5 spot, we have El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey. You have some more good old intimate airtime located on this ride, in the style of multiple extreme camelbacks. This ride is known for intensity, this ride is known for being crazy, and every single one of the elements really prove this fact. And these elements aren't just intense, they are massive, so they seem to last an even longer time than your average intense airtime pop. And the Rolling Thunder Hill at the end provides some of the most intense airtime that Intamin has put out with. For the number 4 spot, we go to Air Force One at Fun Spot Atlanta, located in Georgia. This is, without a doubt, the most intense RMC I've been on. Now, why is it not my number 1 coaster? Well, that is simply because that its element is shorter than others, but the elements that it has just shocked me in every way possible. This ride is just filled completely with airtime focused or whip focused elements that will have you going every which way during the ride's experience, especially that double up and the quad down, which are my 2 favorite moments on this ride and some of the most intense moments that RMC has to offer. For another intense RMC, we go to the number 3 spot, which is Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. This ride's collection provides a very intense layout, while providing some very unique elements that you might not even see on some other RMCs. It seems like every element on this ride was made for this ride in particular, and it blends in very good with the rest of the ride. Examples? You have that massive outward banked hill over the station, you have that death roll, and the finale of this ride is no different, providing some very uniquely shaped airtime hills, and every single element seems to have you whipping some sort of direction, whether it be in your seat, out of your seat, or sideways. And even though this layout isn't as long as some other RMCs, the pacing on this ride is something you really can't describe until you see it in person, as it just does not stop until that final brake run. We are staying in the state of Florida for number 2, as we are talking about Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure. This coaster just seems to be the most well-rounded coaster I have ever been on. Starting off even with the entrance, you are greeted with an amazing queue, you are entertained basically the entire time, and then once you get in that station, you are just wowed by how it looks, and you're not even on the ride yet. Once the ride actually starts, you are filled with some amazing roller coaster scenery. You have dinosaur animatronics, you have trees, you have grass everywhere, and the ride ends with my favorite coaster grand finale of all time. You have an airtime moment, followed by the famous Mosasaurus roll, and then one more off-axis airtime hill to catch you off guard. And finally, the best coaster I've ridden, my number 1 coaster, is Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. Like I said earlier on this list, my favorite moment on a coaster is airtime. You have the reported 27.2 seconds of pure airtime, and I can truly believe it, as this ride just has a non-stop layout of nothing but airtime moments, and even hang time moments as well. And then of course you have the variety of the airtime. It's not just camelback after camelback, but it's also not your traditional airtime as well. And that's what I like about the airtime variety that this ride has. You have so many different moments. You have traditional camelbacks, you have outward bank turns, you have double ups, double downs, you have off-axis airtime hills that bank you, airtime hills that bank you sideways, completely sideways 90 degrees. So when I say this ride is my number 1, it is just because every single time I go on it, I am absolutely amazed by every single airtime moment I just mentioned. Something else I love about this ride is that most elements on this ride would be a standout element on the average coaster. I cannot wait to ride even more coasters in 2025, add on to this count, and make a list at the end of the year to entertain you once again. So until next time, this is Cedar Flags, and I'll see you all later.